The MeanGene Show on iHeartRadio. You can also listen on Spotify, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Amazon Music, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. The MeanGene Show airs weekly on iHeartRadio with guest professional athletes, national sports writers, and much more. We discuss the latest in the NFL, NBA, MLB, NHL, and more. Here's your host, Mean Gene.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the MeanGene Show. We are live once again from Virgin Hotels, Las Vegas, 4455 Paradise Road. And we're also broadcasting on podbean.com. And, of course, later you can download the show on iHeartRadio, Spotify, wherever you listen to your podcast. The show is brought to you by Virgin Hotels, Las Vegas, the newest resort off the block. Welcome to your new playground. We're also brought to you by Captain, changing mobility for good. Travel confidently in clean vehicles driven by trained professionals. You can book your car today. That's www.captain.com. Kaptyn, Captain with a K. So we are back for another exciting show here at Virgin Hotels, Las Vegas. We call it Day 2. The weather's nice in Las Vegas. Yesterday we had a great time speaking with a couple of the restaurant owners, well, not owners, but managers, GMs of two nice restaurants inside Virgin Hotels, Casa Calavera and the Night Market. Those guys came by and told us everything about their restaurants. You can, get that podcast downloaded and listen to it. But today we're going to kind of get into the NFL on the MeanGene Show, and I got a very exciting guest here. This lady is very well known, okay? I mean, she, oh my goodness, she's done movies and TV shows, and I tell you, I am so honored to have her. She covers the Dodgers, the Rams, Lakers, and the Clippers, and her show is entitled Play in the Field, okay? So she was actually at SoFi Stadium on Thursday night, and we're going to get into this. Please welcome to the show, Maria Serrao. Hey, Maria.
Hey, Gene. How are you doing? Yes, it was live from SoFi Stadium and a lot of quiet fans at the end of that night.
I bet. We were watching it here in Las Vegas, and, the anticipation, surprised to see a lot of Buffalo Bills fans all over, and they were wearing those jerseys confidently, but of course it didn't compare to being there at the stadium.
It didn't, and it started off, of course, with the Super Bowl banner falling from the rafters. We had Andrew Wentworth, who just retired, and he was there on the field with Stan Kroenke, and so it was a big celebration for the Rams, and there was a lot of expectations for the Rams to really come out and be dynamic, especially with new players like Allen Robinson and Bobby Wagner, but as we all know, they fell a little bit flat in the second half of that game.
They did, and I want to kind of take it back up to the pregame. The NFL is just really going all out with these, the kickoff of football, and I'm so glad they got rid of the double Monday night football games to kick off the season because if you were on the East Coast, you didn't see that second game anyway. But what did you think about the festivities? I mean, we had the national anthem, we had the African American national anthem, we had everything. I mean, it was like I'm like, are we watching the Super Bowl or what?
It's so funny. It's interesting you talk about the entertainment value now of football because it was spectacular, and even having Ozzy Osbourne at halftime. I mean, they have really turned football games now, NFL games, into a show. And like I said, the pregame ceremony was just so exciting, and the Rams had asked the fans to be in their seats a little bit early that night so that they could be a part of that unveiling of the banner. And so I think that they are adding a lot more entertainment value to football because it brings in a new audience as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And then just tell us about SoFi Stadium now, and don't laugh at me, Maria. I've only driven around in circles looking at that stadium. I have yet to get in to, watch a game, cover a game, but I just want to hear from your experience. I mean, I've seen it on TV, but how is this place?
You know what? It's grand, and it is every bit of everything that you see on television. I think that when Stan Kroenke had his vision, it came right from Jerry Jones when he created Jerry's World out in Dallas. So
Hmm.
he wanted something that was going to be even bigger. I mean, that massive screen that engulfs the entire stadium, it doesn't matter where you're sitting in the stadium, you have an amazing view of the field. And with that big, huge screen that goes 360, people get so excited when they're seen on the big screen. So it really is something that you really need to experience, because like I said, being in the stadium, there's not a bad seat in there. So it's quite amazing from any perspective.
So, and I'm looking, and I'm thinking back a couple of well, just last year actually, there was a game that was canceled due to a thunderstorm. So now I wasn't sure how that was possible because I thought there was like a roof over the stadium. No.
So of course, Gene, you know it never ever rains in Southern California, except
Exactly.
except for the Monday night football game against the Chargers and the Raiders, of course. And that game was actually they did get it off, but it was postponed because the way that the roof is, it's not really completely enclosed.
Okay.
It almost looks like there's a huge tarp on top of it, but the sides are open. So when it had started to rain, it was raining in there almost sideways. And for the once in a lifetime, there was lightning. So they had to wait until the storm passed over. It did that, and then they could resume the Raider game, which, by the way, tomorrow is going to be another sea of black. It'll be a Chargers home game, but you know that Southern California is really, and always will be, it's a Raiders town. So that's going to be a very exciting game in SoFi as well.
You know, you're absolutely right. And,
Yes.
the town feels sort of empty in Vegas, and that's because the Raider fans have actually went out and made that drive or flight to cover this big game. Chargers Raiders is always an exciting game.
And Gene, you know from being in Las Vegas, the fans, it doesn't matter if they're in Oakland, Los Angeles, Las Vegas, they will travel for their Raiders. So it's going to be quite a spectacle, to say the least.
Absolutely. Folks, once again, we are honored to have Maria Serrao join us from Los Angeles here on the MeanGene Show, and it's just an honor to have you. And I tell you what, I value the hard work that you do and what you put in there. And anybody I ask about you in Southern California, they're like, "Are you kidding me? She's going to be on your show?"
Oh, that's so nice, Gene. Thank you for saying that. That's such an honor. I love doing what I do. It's so much fun, and getting to know players and teams, and that's really the best part, because you really get to meet people just as people, and
Yes.
and that's what players are. And I think people forget that a lot of times. So I loved you being able to do stories about what else they do in their life, and how they've gotten to where they are, because as you know, football is a very, very tough road, and you sacrifice a lot. People always think of the money and all that, and yes, that's great, but there is so much sacrifice, and these guys they're great. For the most part, I have to say they're all so much fun and so interesting to talk to.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I want to get a little bit more into the Bills and Rams, and
Yes.
I want to get your opinion because every preseason poll, I guess if you whatever you want to look at as far as the NFL goes, everyone has pretty much put the Buffalo Bills in the Super Bowl. And I got to ask you, after that performance that they did on Thursday night, how do you feel about the Bills this year?
I have to tell you, I think it's so funny that everybody gives their Super Bowl predictions. Maybe even you gave yours already. And I would say half of everybody's that I've seen, from ESPN to NFL Network, it's the Buffalo Bills. I'm hearing Tampa Bay in there. I'm hearing a few other teams. But I have to say, that is a complete team. Allen has just progressed as far, Josh Allen. Great quarterback. I mean, he's very poised. You can see him getting better and better as he's playing. You can just see this team is really turning into a complete team. And I had a chance to actually catch up with Von Miller after the game. And I said, Von, we miss you so much in Los Angeles. He was such a great addition to the Rams last year. But he is really going to be a freight train for that team, because he said, I could never hate Los Angeles. They refreshed me. And I said, I think they wish they hadn't refreshed you quite that much in the game on Thursday Night Football, but they are really a complete team, and it wouldn't surprise me at all to see them in the end in that Super Bowl in Arizona.
I tell you what, and I'm glad you brought Von Miller up because we're sitting there watching him, and it's not like the Rams don't know what he's capable of.
That's true.
He was a teammate, with them and led them to the Super Bowl. But the one thing that struck out to me is how he has come in and become a leader of this
Yes.
team, and they are gravitating to him like, whoa, we're going to ride your shoulders, man.
And it's interesting because Aaron Donald really is a very quiet guy. He's the leader of the defense. Of course, he's one of the best defensive players in the league. But he even told us when we asked him about Von, what did Von add to the team? And how did he help you? And he said, Von is such a vocal leader. And he really taught me how to be a vocal leader because everybody so much looks up to Aaron, and just the way he goes about his business, the way he works out and he trains. And that is something he got from Von. So Von will be that same vocal leader in Buffalo, which will only help that team to succeed.
Absolutely. And then I got to also ask, when we look at Von Miller and the fact that he won a Super Bowl with the Denver Broncos. He won a Super Bowl with the Rams now, and then here he's about, he's knocking on the door. Has anyone won a Super Bowl with three different teams?
Great question, but he did say he wants to be 3 for 3, so we may be seeing it in the making right now.
Yeah, I tell you what, it's just scary though. It's really scary. So now,
it is.
And looking at the game, okay, so 31-10, Rams lose to the Buffalo Bills, and turnovers. Just I guess it's just part of the preseason dust or rust is what I meant.
Well, Gene, it's interesting because they went into halftime 10-10. They were tied. And especially the last drive when the Rams went downfield, kicked the field goal, and you thought, okay, this is just a spectacular game. When we talked to head coach Sean McVay after the game, we said, what happened in the second half? Because the second half, it just seemed like Matthew Stafford couldn't get anything going. They've got Allen Robinson on top of Cooper Kupp, and Allen Robinson was only targeted twice. And Sean McVay said, I have got to do a better job getting that ball to Allen Robinson. For him to only be targeted twice was such a mixed match because all we heard about was Allen is great catching the long ball, the intermediate ball. He's a great blocker. So to take him out of the game, it really only left the room for Cooper Kupp and for the tight ends like Tyler Higbee, and it wasn't enough. And the Rams never really got the running game going. We thought we would see a lot more of Cam Akers. We saw Darrell Henderson, but he really couldn't get anything going. So to not see the tandem of the two of them, as we saw so much last year, and especially with Sony Michel going now to the Chargers, he was a workhorse for the Rams. People forget that. So it was really in the second half, not being able to get that offense going, and the line not being able to really give Stafford enough time to find those open receivers. And I think that is what happened. And the collapse, as we all saw, happened in the second half.
Yeah, that is so true. And then I got to ask you too, because just looking at Matthew Stafford, and I know it's just one game, but there were times, Maria, that Matthew Stafford looked like the old Matthew Stafford from Detroit. So I got to ask, are there any concerns or issues with Matthew Stafford?
So in the offseason, Matthew Stafford had what we were told was a procedure. He did have a surgery on that elbow. It was repaired. That's why he did not play in the preseason. He never threw a ball in the OTAs, and he started to throw in summer camp. But Sean McVay, head coach Sean McVay always says none of the starters will play in the preseason. So basically the first month of the Rams season is getting these guys going. Do I think that Matthew Stafford is really ready to go? I think it's going to take him a couple of games to get into rhythm because let's face it, even if you've been in the league for 13 years, you still need some time really connecting with these wide receivers and the tight ends and getting a feel for how it's going to be in live game action. You can do it in the film room, but until you're out there with those other defenses exploding against you, it's going to be a little bit difficult. So I think he still has that. They say that when it comes to elite quarterbacks, Matthew Stafford is still an elite quarterback. So I think it's in the next 3 games, especially. They've got the Falcons next week. Then they've got 2 divisional matchups in Arizona and San Francisco.
Yeah.
And I think by the end of week 4, we are going to find out the real Matthew Stafford.
Yeah, we'll find out. And I tell you, it was just, and you brought up the run game too. I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
maybe they'll be able to get something done. And I was just like you with Cam Akers, 3 attempts. I'm like, what the, the stats for him were just like, you make everyone scratch their head. But I want to ask you about, because everyone talked about, okay, the offense and the defense, but what about the offensive line? I mean, did we miss something there? Allowing him to get sacked, Matthew Stafford get sacked so many times, or are they missing something there?
Well, they're missing Andrew Wentworth. Of course, he retired. So Big Whit is not in the middle. They have moved over players, and they're trying some new schemes there. So I think, once again, that's going to take some time for that to really get settled. Again, you can't just throw guys out there and say, okay, do your thing. I think it's going to take a couple of games. And back in the old days, that is why they used the preseason. But then we saw so many injuries go down in the last few years. So many head coaches just said no more starters in the preseason. So I think it's going to take a couple of weeks before we really see that line holding up, and we see that's going to work for the team. But yeah, it didn't look good, especially in the second half of that game.
No, it didn't. And I want to talk to you about their schedule, because you just mentioned, the next couple of games there. And,
yes.
I mean, do they not have the toughest schedule in the NFL?
Well, they should, right? You win the biggest game of the year, you're supposed to have the toughest schedule. So, and that it's going to be a very interesting division, because, San Francisco's got a new quarterback, and Arizona is now supposed to be part of the elite. So the next 3 games of the Falcons, they should be able to take care of the Falcons. If not, I think that everybody is going to be shaking in their boots a little bit if they go 0-2. But those divisional matchups are so very important, because you've got to play those teams twice. So going into Arizona, going into San Francisco is not going to be any small feat for this team.
No, and those divisional games are so important, I mean, because to get out of the West, the NFC West, with the I think we count everybody except Seattle, but not to Seattle fans are probably not listening to my show anyway. but anyway, Arizona and then of course who's the other team? Frisco. Okay.
San Francisco, absolutely.
Yeah. So. All right. So looking at some more of the game stats there. So you talked about Allen Robinson. And
the other big pickup on defense was Bobby Wagner. Bobby Wagner actually did really well with Aaron Donald. They played well together, but when you've got a Josh Allen on the other side, he was able to get to so many targets so often. And, it's interesting, because Jalen Ramsey is, of course, locked down on the outside, but he struggled a little bit as well. Mm-hmm. And so he had an injury preseason, but he said he's ready to go. These guys actually have to get going. We've got to see a better Jalen Ramsey. We've got to see, we've got to see more out of Bobby Wagner. We've got to see Troy Hill step up. He had a pretty good game. The defense held up, pretty well, considering what they had to work against. But in that second half, it just seemed like one thing after another did not go the Rams' way.
That's true. And so what's the word with Odell Beckham? And, what's going on with him?
Interesting story about Odell. So this has been the first season we've been allowed back in the locker room post-COVID now. We're hoping post-COVID. Mm-hmm. So we walk into the locker room last week, and lo and behold, who has a locker in there? Odell Beckham Jr. And we're all kind of looking around and thinking, well, we haven't seen Odell, and we don't know what's going on. So we asked, and they said, oh, well, we forgot to take it down. Okay. Go back in the next day. Odell's locker is still there. His name's still up there. And he was there for the pregame ceremony. Okay. I don't know if a lot of fans know this, but he also crashed head coach Sean McVay's wedding this summer.
Okay.
So I know there's been rumblings about maybe he's going to go back here, go back there, but I think the Rams are hoping to get him back as soon as he's able, as soon as he's healthy.
Because you got to think now. I know, like I said, no one is hitting the panic button yet. But
Right.
Cooper Kupp, 13 receptions, 128 yards, by far dominated. The passing game there. But
Yes.
I got to think that Odell Beckham is going to be on this team before long.
Well, and you have to also remember Van Jefferson, he was also not able to play this week. He should be back for next week.
Okay.
But without Van and with no OBJ, yeah, it was basically Cooper Kupp and then a missing Allen Robinson, who was open for many of the throws. But for some reason, I don't know if it was the play calling. We tried to ask, Coach about that. And he just said, one thing about Coach McVay, he will always take responsibility. He said, I didn't do a good enough job putting them in a position to win. So we have to believe that come next week, we're going to see a lot more balls thrown to Allen Robinson to get him going in this offense.
Okay. And then just kind of going back to the Buffalo Bills, and I know we talked about Josh Allen, but what do you think about Stephon Diggs? I mean, did he not do what we expected him to do?
He absolutely did. I mean, he is one of the best wide receivers for a reason. He is just spectacular. And they just could not keep him out of the end zone. They couldn't keep the ball out of his hands. He does what he does. He's one of those players that he is at an elite level. And I am sure that Buffalo is very happy to have him on their side of the field.
Oh, I bet. So I got to ask, do you play fantasy football?
You know what? I do. And I can't believe you just got this out of me, because I very rarely talk about it. But we were on the sideline, and I said, is this a bad thing if I tell people that Stephon Diggs is on my fantasy team?
Oh, that's where I was going, because he got taken in my draft like right away.
Yes. Of course, I also have Cam Akers in my fantasy draft too, so I want to see him get going as well. So
I know it, folks. Once again, we are having fun here talking about the Los Angeles Rams, the NFC West, and we're doing it with Maria Serrao from Playing the Field. She is just fabulous. Lots of information. So I'm gonna get off the NFL a little bit.
Okay.
And then we can sort of jump into some of the other sports there in LA, like the Dodgers.
Yes, the Dodgers, who are hoping to get back to a World Series this year. Of course, they're leading in their division, and they're about a gazillion games up on the San Diego Padres. I think their magic number is something like 7 to clinch the division, but they are playing the Padres this weekend in San Diego. They did lose last night, but every time you win and you beat somebody in your division, it's like 2 games. So if they could win today and tomorrow, the magic number will go down to 3. So we'll see what happens. But they'll tell you what, this is a strong team, and they are on a roll.
They're on a roll, Maria. And, and look, I love the Dodgers, my favorite team. I have to admit that, even being a member of the media, we just have to admit some things.
You do, absolutely.
But it just scares me with this team, because I think back to the year, they faced the Red Sox there. And, and I was like, okay, man, it looked like our year. Next thing you know, we kind of got in there, and I did not see the Red Sox beating us at all.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting with the Dodgers because, it always comes down to pitching, and they have had a few bumps in the road. Of course, Tony Gonsolin was like 14-1, and, he has been doing great. He was an all-star this year, and then he had a little bump in the road. They're keeping him out. He's on the IL right now and not progressing as quickly as they're hoping, but they are feeling confident that he will be back for the playoffs, and even hopefully a little bit before that. Clayton Kershaw came back the other day, and he looked really spectacular. They've got Julio Urias. He is doing well. And, of course, Anderson is having a fantastic season. But you have got to look at these hitters in Mookie Betts and, Trey Turner and Justin Turner. And this emergence of players like a Thompson who came back and some of these guys that were just forgotten about. Andrew Friedman has a way of finding these guys, bringing them to the Dodgers, and boom, their careers are resurrected. So they've got some amazing hitters this year.
So you mentioned Mookie Betts. So, I mean, are we ready to forgive him for, that rare era? That
I'll tell you something. Dodger fans are very forgiving. I think about the only person they won't forgive is Jose Altuve, maybe Carlos Correa. But if you come back and you are a Dodger, they somehow find a way to open up their arms and love you. So yeah, I think they're over Mookie now.
And you bring up the Astros now. I
Yeah.
live in Houston, Texas, which is so difficult to live there. I actually supported them, for a while,
Yep.
and it was okay. But after that World Series,
It was tough.
it was tough. It's even
Yeah.
tough to watch them now. And I want to get your thoughts on, because I know people had lots of opinions.
Yep.
The league came down on the Astros, maybe not as much as what people wanted, especially players kind of
Yeah.
by with got away with murder, so to speak.
Yes.
And then they bring in Dusty Baker, who is just amazing, one of the greatest managers of all time.
Gene, I'm glad you brought up Dusty Baker, because I was having this conversation with somebody at the All-Star game, because of course we had the MLB All-Star game in Los Angeles this year, and Dusty was he was one of the managers, and I said it's so interesting because what that team has been through, and really they did it to themselves as far as I'm concerned, and what the fans say. The best thing they did was to bring Dusty in there because, number one, he was a Dodger.
Right.
He is beloved. And I think only Dusty Baker could have gone into that environment and really brought back that love and that feeling of family. And, people very rarely talk about how important that feeling is in the locker room. But I'm telling you, it is important. And Dusty brought that back. So, and he's the only person from a Houston dugout that could walk across the field at Dodger Stadium, and we open our arms to him.
Yeah, that was, I couldn't be mad at them any longer after when they brought Dusty on. So I want to go and talk about Freddie Freeman.
Freddie,
his audition, coming from SoCal. What's the love there with Freddie?
You know what? He is already a fan favorite. I mean, they were chanting Freddie, Freddie as soon as he came into Dodger Stadium, and he is another perfect fit for the Los Angeles Dodgers. It's amazing to me when you see a player who was so beloved in Atlanta all of those years and comes into Dodger Stadium, and he fits into that locker room. I mean, we see players that go to different teams, and it's not always a perfect fit. I mean, we've seen Anthony Rendon not quite fit into the Angels locker room, and we don't know why, and we kind of question it. But Freddie Freeman came into the Dodgers locker room, and once again, I have to take my hat off to Andrew Friedman, the GM there, because he just fits.
Well,
he just fits.
You know what, Maria? Now, I was not yelling Freddie Freeman when I was at the NLCS.
Of course not. We were yelling against him. We were booing him.
I know it because, that was so terrifying. I flew all the way from Houston to, I'm going to see my Dodgers get to the World Series, and the Atlanta Braves came out of nowhere that year.
Did.
But let me tell you what scares me about the National League. The fact that, now you have this wild card thing.
Right.
And just like in football, whoever's hot sometimes can ride on to the Super Bowl. That's
it. It's a hot hand.
And, looking at the Padres, I know you said the Dodgers are a gazillion games ahead.
Right.
But I think the Phillies, there's just some teams that the Dodgers have issues with.
Well, and how about the St. Louis Cardinals, who are right there as well? And they're coming to Dodger Stadium for the first time this year in 2 weeks. And, we may see the great Albert Pujols, who has 5 home runs.
Oh, my goodness.
Unless he's hit one today, I believe he's 5 home runs away from that 700 mark. And every time we see Albert, I've known him for years. With his whole entire career with the Angels, the 10 years there, and last year we were so lucky to have him at the Dodgers as well. But he is 5 away from 700, and every time we see him on the field hit a home run, I say it is history. We see a historical moment happen.
It is, because he just did, for a while he didn't look like he was ever going to hit another home run.
No. And in the last month, I think we've seen 5 already. So it's a pretty special time for the St. Louis Cardinals, and they're right there. They will be in the postseason as well.
So what's your outlook? So what do you think? What's the likely National League Championship Series matchup?
Well, we are hoping that the Dodgers, of course, will have the bye week. As it looks right now, they will, but they will either have to play, Atlanta. They will have to play the Braves or the Cardinals. They could possibly get the Padres or maybe the Phillies if they're there. Whoever wins those wild card games, it's going to be scary because, like you said, that's a 1-game series, and then we've got a short game series. So we're still rooting for the Dodgers. We're thinking that they're going to be there in the very end, but it is going to be a fun ride. I
It's
can
going
tell
to
you
be
that.
a heck of a ride. So now
Yes.
I tell you what I want to see. I want to see a Dodgers Yankees World
Of
Series.
course we want to see that. That is the goal, is the Dodgers and the Yankees. Nobody wants to see Houston. As much as we love Dusty Baker,
No.
no more Houston Astros. But, they are playing amazing baseball. So they will have to fight that out in the American League. The Dodgers will worry about the boys in blue, and they'll play their game. And that is how they will make it to the World Series.
Absolutely. So, okay, now I'm going to take you around the world because
Okay.
this is your expertise.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
Let's stay in Los Angeles and let's
Okay.
go to crypto.com. Is that what they call
boy.
it? So let's go. What's going on with the Lakers?
We need a whole other show to talk about the Lakers. The Lakers and LeBron is a different animal than it has ever been in the last 10 years that I've covered the Lakers. It is a different team, and the Clippers really just as talented, if maybe some years even more than the Lakers, but the Lakers run the town. It is a Dodgers, Lakers, Rams town, and that's just the way that it is in Los Angeles. We never know about the Lakers in the last few years, so we are hoping that they will come out and be great. But let's face it, Gene, LeBron is at the end. He's not at the beginning.
Yeah, that's true. That is so true. And I, look, this morning, and I know you can't really believe everything you see on the internet, but there was
really we can't believe everything, huh?
No, we can't believe everything. So
all right.
What's this crazy thing I saw? C.J. McCollum and Damian Lillard trade for Anthony Davis. Have you heard that?
I have not heard that one. I have not heard that one yet. But we hear so many rumors with the Lakers, we don't know from moment to moment which one is true until they call a press conference.
That's true. So what's your overall feeling of just Laker management? I know, Jenny Buzz can do no wrong in our eyes, but at the same time, there's been some questionable decision-making from Rob Pelinka.
It's a disappointment. I think that really they're held in such high esteem, and Laker fans expect them to do well every year. Let's face it, we had so many years with Kobe and Shaq, and even with Kobe, and to have LeBron come in, they did win one, of course, in the bubble, but they just seem to have a lot of players that, once again, do not work in that locker room. We had it was an all-star team last year with everybody in that locker room, but and Anthony Davis gets hurt, LeBron gets hurt. I forgot that Carmelo Anthony was even in that locker room at one point. And we've got new coaches coming in and out. So it's difficult. I think that they're going to have a very, very tough road because, as you know, there are so many talented teams in the NBA. And the Lakers, they've got a ways to go, and they have a lot of older players there. They've got to get younger somehow.
That's true. That is so true.
So,
you know what? We don't want to leave Clipper fans out.
We don't.
So all we're going to do is just mention Clippers. No, I'm just kidding. What?
And then maybe they turn the radio off. I don't know what happens really, but
something like. Well, I mean, the window of opportunity for the Clippers is just. I don't know if it was ever there. I mean, if you can ever get Paul George and Kawhi Leonard going at the same time? What's going on?
We've seen so many great Clipper teams, even when Doc Rivers was there, and it's always a head scratcher with the Clippers. I mean, we always hear about the Clipper curse, but honestly, we've seen Chris Paul there with Blake Griffin years, and we've seen so many talented players. But if you can get Paul George going and Kawhi Leonard, you you've got a spectacular chance to be great. It's just, but once again, you get two guys like that hurt, and it's just a mishmash of what is going on out there now. So we'll see. Once again, we'll see how it goes. But basketball in Los Angeles is, I always tell people, it's more drama in LA basketball than a soap opera.
Oh, it is, absolutely.
It,
And
it,
no, go ahead.
yeah, no, and you just never know what to expect from one game to the next. So, hold on, put your seatbelts on, because it'll be a wild ride in LA basketball.
So let's talk about this arena that Steve Ballmer is building. I mean, what's the
Yeah.
latest on that, and can you describe this thing? I mean, is it
Well,
almost done?
It's not almost done. We still have a couple more years to go, but he is really one of those owners that I think every team dreams about, because he wants that team to be great. He's not afraid to put the money into it, and that's the kind of owner that you want in sports. I think sometimes we see teams that we always talk about the Oakland A's and why they're not good. They have such a good farm system, but they have really good players, and then they give them all away because they can't pay them, and so he's one of those dream owners, and you just root for him to do well. And this stadium will be spectacular. Of course, it's going to be next to SoFi, so it has to be great.
Yeah.
And in a couple more years, it'll be a sight to see. That's for sure.
And me and a couple of my partners were talking about the days of, the rumors where we always thought the Clippers were going to go down to Anaheim and play
Yes.
at that pond. But now it looked like the wait is worth it.
Yeah, I think it really is. I mean, when the Angels and the Ducks were in Anaheim, we thought, well, maybe the Chargers and maybe the Clippers will end up there. But, for the Chargers to end up at SoFi, and now for the Clippers to have their own arena, I mean, that's just a dream. And now we've just got to get rid of that Clipper curse, and we've got to get them far into the playoffs, and hopefully a championship banner and a ring for the Clippers.
I know, that's right. And okay, we're going
hope
back to
so.
football now. So you brought. So we talked about the Rams. Let's talk about the Chargers, and then we can just sort of segue on into the matchup between the Chargers and the Raiders.
I'm going to give you a prediction that I did make mid last week. I said it is very possible that both home teams this weekend, meaning the Rams and the Chargers, could lose at SoFi.
Really?
With Devontae Adams, with Carr in the Raider silver and black, and it will be a sea of black in SoFi tomorrow. I will not be shocked if the Chargers do not win that game. Having said that, I have to tell you that they look really good this year. We've got Brandon Staley, second-year coach. So we'll see. I mean, there's always those what ifs with the Chargers, and those maybes, and there's always something that just doesn't quite feel right. But we'll see how they do. But the Raiders, I'm telling you, there's so much excitement about the Raiders this year. So I would not be surprised if the Raiders come out with a W tomorrow at SoFi.
And it's what makes that division so interesting now. You went from maybe a one-team to, two-team division. Now you got 4 elite quarterbacks in this division.
Yes, you do. I mean, you've got Russell Wilson who left Seattle. Now he's at the Denver Broncos. You've got Derek Carr, who is spectacular as a Raider. I mean, this division is going to be much, much more exciting than it ever has been. I totally agree with that.
I want to talk about Justin Herbert because, I look at Justin Herbert and Josh Allen as the future quarterbacks of the league. They are big quarterbacks.
Big quarterbacks. I mean, they're big quarterbacks in stature, and Justin Herbert is really, I think he will be an elite quarterback if he's not already there. When you ask other players like a Keenan Allen on that team, tell us about Herbert, he says, there's nothing he can't do. Can he get better? He's already pretty good. We asked him that in preseason. How much better can he get? And he said he's already pretty good. So it's going to be exciting to see him play and to connect on the field tomorrow at SoFi.
Now, one of the scary things about the Chargers, because I can't remember who I picked to win the AFC West, because I don't know if I picked
Kansas City, maybe.
Kansas
And we
City,
still have Patrick Mahomes out there. Yep.
True. I might have picked Kansas City or the Raiders. I think the Raiders. I did say the Raiders are going to go deep in the playoffs this year.
I believe they will. I believe they will as well.
I have that feeling, but you
Yep.
know, the thing that scares me about the Chargers is I was at, my son, both my boys were raised in San Diego, California. So
Oh, wow.
they are still true Charger fans. So
Nice.
I took my oldest son my youngest son, we went to the Houston Texans versus Chargers game last year. We thought it was going to be an easy Chargers win.
Yeah.
But the Texans, who I think only won, 3-4 games last year,
Yeah.
Kenny, they didn't just beat the Chargers, they beat them pretty good, and that
Yes.
was scary.
Gene, I don't know if you see this, but with so many of the young coaches, I think sometimes they overcomplicate the game plan. And we did see that with Sean McVay the first couple of years. We've seen that with some of these younger coaches. And I think Brandon Staley last year, that was his first year. And we saw some of the games just kind of a head scratcher. Why are they losing to the Houston Texans? Why did the last game against the Raiders, why call the timeout? Why not take the tie and go into the playoffs? And so I think that sometimes football is a very simple game. Don't complicate it. It's X's and O's. It's the same game that you played in high school. Don't overcomplicate. And I think that happened last year with the Chargers. I really do. So I think you're going to see a not so complicated Brandon Staley this year.
Okay.
So.
It's going to be interesting to see. I just
It
think
is.
the AFC is going to be, Russell Wilson has just brought so much attention to, not that it was already attention at this division, but like we said, having 4 elite quarterbacks in this division is going to be something to watch. And who knows, we could have a Super Bowl, the AFC the champion could come from this division.
Absolutely. And think about this. The NFL gods they were spectacular this year because not only do the Rams start with the Buffalo Bills, but we've got the Raiders playing the Chargers, divisional rivals. We've got Arizona playing the Chiefs. And so many huge games that right out of the chute, it's going to be really something to see. So it's going to be exciting.
Okay. Now, are you ready to travel with me?
I'm ready to travel with you.
Because we're getting ready to go to the East Coast, okay?
Okay, let's go to the East Coast.
We're going to the East Coast, and we are going to talk about this guy by the name of Baker Mayfield.
Oh, Baker Mayfield,
okay. Because you said the football gods. So the football gods are definitely going to be at this game tomorrow. And Baker Mayfield, he's now with the Carolina Panthers, took a $3.5 million pay cut. And he gets to face his former team tomorrow. What are your thoughts on this one?
I have to tell you something interesting. When we talked to Bobby Wagner, when he was traded from Seattle to the Rams, he said it was very unexpected. It was almost a little heartbreaking because of the only home that he had ever known. And he told us on that first day, I circled that game when we play Seattle because he wanted to show them what they lost. And I think for Baker Mayfield, there was a big red circle around this game because you always want to show the team that lets you go what they missed.
So, we have a show that's going to come on later. We do this out of Las Vegas. It's called The Picks Are In. And during this show, is hosted by Mr. Pick. So he sort of kind of like look at the odds, over, unders, and all of that great stuff. So this morning I was talking with him. The spread on this game has changed. It was favorite the Panthers, favorite the Cleveland, and now I think it's a pick 'em. So what do you think there was so much fluctuation there?
I think they don't know. Both of those teams have been wild cards in the years past. We've been you can't really put your finger on either one of those teams as far as what they're going to do. So I think that's why the odds have changed so drastically.
So do you have a prediction for this game?
Oh, I know you're going to put me on the spot. I think I'm going to have to go with Carolina.
Really?
I think I'm going to go with Carolina tomorrow. I'll probably be wrong, but I think maybe I'm going to go with Carolina.
Well, I tell you what, because right after this show, I have a show called The Sports Kings, and we're
Uh,
actually going to make our predictions. I think Woods is supposed to come back and join us to make these predictions because,
Woo!
we told him we're going to talk about the other 31 teams. We're just not going to talk about your Cincinnati Bengals the
Yeah,
whole.
don't. I don't think that's a good idea. He's always going to root for the Cincinnati
Oh,
Bengals. Now,
oh,
come on,
yes.
Gene.
Yeah, oh, I know. Yes, yeah, he will. So, okay, and what other game this weekend that stands out to you that you find interesting and you want to talk about with us?
Okay, let's see. Let me look here. Let me look at the schedule. Well, you throw a couple at me, and we'll talk about them. Let me
Okay,
see here.
well, Kansas City, Arizona Cardinals.
I think that actually that's probably, we talked about this yesterday. I think that is going to be such an exciting game. And it's also going to be a measuring stick for Arizona for a few reasons, because they have got to show that they actually have what it takes to be an elite team. So much has been expected of the Arizona Cardinals, and then they get through halfway through the season and they start to fall flat. So
Mm-hmm.
I think they need to really step up. They need to beat Kansas City, because we already know Patrick Mahomes is great. But for Patrick Mahomes on the other side, the shine kind of went off a little bit last year. I think more was expected. They were not expected to lose in the playoffs last year. So this is going to be a measuring stick for both teams. Honestly, I think that Kansas City is going to they're going to travel to Arizona. Is that right? That's an
Yeah, yeah,
Arizona home
yeah.
game. I
That's correct.
believe I believe Kansas City is going to come out on top.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting game because and like you said, the storylines here. You got
Oh,
Kyler Murray who gets this contract, and he's the homework assignment is not there anymore in his contract. But
no.
and then you get Patrick Mahomes. Everyone is going to be
Yes.
interested in seeing how he's going to be able to get Juju Smith-Schuster involved in the game, and perhaps some of the other receivers that they have now minus Tyreek Hill. So.
Well, and I was just going to say, without Tyreek Hill,
Mm-hmm.
this is going to really be a game changer for them. And what was strange to me is why they let him go anyway, because he
Yeah.
was such a go-to player for Pat Mahomes, and to let
I
him
know
go,
it.
that was a head scratcher for sure. But getting back to Kyler Murray,
Mm-hmm.
I think he's on the hot seat because so much is expected of him.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, when you
You
get these
know?
big contracts, now
Yes.
you got to go out and perform. So, Maria,
Yep.
I tell you what, this has been
Whew.
great. We've been going at it for 47
I
minutes.
know we have.
This
This has
is
been
great.
so much fun. So much
Yes.
fun.
And I tell you what, if you're ever in Las Vegas here, especially during the football season, and I'll let you know my schedule here
Okay.
in Vegas, love to get you down to KDWN because tonight I have to do a local show here on
Okay.
KDWN.
Absolutely.
720, and we can get you here, take care of you here and stuff.
Oh, that's so
Come,
nice.
come out here and hang out with us. I'd love to meet you.
I still co-host. Jerry Robinson comes on my show. We co-hosted. He was my very first co-host 20 years ago, if you can believe that. And he was, of course, he was on the great Eagles teams and the
Hmm.
Raiders.
Hmm.
And we still co-host together. The Raiders, we're working on a story with the Raiders because so many of their alumni come to Vegas for the
Yes,
game. So
yes.
I will keep you posted as far as what we're going to be doing out there in Vegas. And I would love to meet you in person as well.
Sounds great. So, folks, I hope you have enjoyed my guest, Maria Serrao from Play in the Field. So tell the listeners where they can find your work, listen to your work, and all that great stuff.
Gene, first of all, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. And if you're not in Southern California, to catch our show on Channel 3, which is on Cox and Verizon, you can always go to playingthefieldtv.com and watch anytime you want.
All right, Maria, we're going to let you go and enjoy the rest of your weekend and get ready for those big games tomorrow.
Get ready. We're ready for some football. It's here. It's on now.
All right. So, hey,
All right,
we will see you and enjoy yourself.
You do the same, Gene. Have a great night.
All right. Thank you,
All right.
folks. Maria Serrao joining us here on the MeanGene Show. And, man, what a great interview. What a great she is a remarkable individual. And I tell you what, we were so honored to have her on the show. That's why we sort of went all around the block to talk about all of the things she's covering in Southern California. So, hey, this is going to wrap it up for the MeanGene Show. And make sure you download the podcast, iHeartRadio, Spotify, wherever you listen to your podcast. So it's been great here. This is our day 2 of broadcast here at Virgin Hotels Las Vegas. Make sure you get on down here and check out this exciting place. Okay, I said earlier, it's the newest kid on the block here. And come here and have fun. There's entertainment. There's good places to eat, everything, the excitement, casinos, you name it. It's all here at Virgin Hotels Las Vegas. All right, so I will see you next week on the Mean Gene Show. Enjoy the weekend and enjoy tomorrow's games.